everybody doing?
We are live. Amen.
We sure are live. It's another beautiful day in sunny California, I must say.
That is. We had some rain, but just want to give you guys a heads up, to check out our Vicky's YouTube channel, Vicki Mack Lataillade. All of our carfitable stuff is out there. And give us, thumbs up, subscribe, and leave us comments. We appreciate it. Get your feedback on what we're doing, and if there's some guests that you would like us to do, just leave some comments on it. Make some recommendations.
Well, I see some friends on.
Yeah, Tannis just joined us.
Patrick Henderson and Winter Blossom. Yes. Thank you guys. You are so supportive all the time, and we really, really do appreciate it. So, and we want to continue to talk to you on Instagram. Patrick, we want to know what you're doing. Tannis, thank you for the birthday acknowledgments last week. I really appreciate that.
Hey, family, she's family.
It's been quite a day. Remember, to check us out on Instagram. And Ann, is that Ann Griffin? Hey, Ann, hope you're doing well. Hope your health is going well. Drake. Yes. Hey, Drake.
Yes, Jake joined us. Hey, thanks for joining in.
What's that, Poochie Butterfly? Okay, Poochie Butterfly. Okay, Angela Miller. Hey, Angela. That means my mom is watching. And we've got, it looks like Pastor Dwayne Chaney is getting ready to join us, so that's going to be great. So I hope you're doing well. We've been, when we get Pastor Chaney on, I'm going to tell you all the stuff we've been doing these days. It has been quite exciting. You doing good, Ann Griffin? That's good. Heron Cable. I don't know where that is. Pastor Chaney, is he supposed to have popped on by now? I don't know what happened. Let's see, we're trying to get him on. Okay, let's see if that does the trick now.
Yes. This is a very influential, very should I say, let me say this. This brother's got more degrees than a thermometer. So he's well studied. He is studied. He is well, I think, very thoughtful about a number of things, and I think you really appreciate it. Hey, family. Drake got his...
He's unable to join us. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, so go ahead.
That's not worried.
Yeah, so... So in any event, so he's a pastor.
Yeah, right here
in Long Beach.
Right.
Long Beach. Some of you might know him. He was.
There you
go. Oh, there you are.
Hey, family.
Hey, family.
How you doing?
Well, I'm gonna tell you how we're really doing.
Okay, talk to me. Talk to me.
Listen,
Pastor.
It's been rough.
We took that second shot after we talked to you for COVID.
Oh wow.
And it has knocked us out. I threw on something that was matching. I mean, last night I was sweating all through the night and everything else.
Chanel was rocked out.
Yeah,
I kind of do it. It wasn't that bad. So
no, I had chills, body aches. I haven't left the bed since we talked.
Yeah, we just came out of the bed.
Literally.
Oh no, listen.
But this is not to discourage anyone.
I had a pace, okay, and my pace was as soon as the Obamas get it, because they know things. I'll get it, right? And so someone just sent me a text saying, the Obamas Michelle's had their vaccination.
Yeah, that's
right. I said, you know what? I may do it, but you just talked me out of it. I'm gonna wait until. Has President Obama received it yet? Has he received his?
Yeah, I saw him get it.
Okay, all right, well.
Now my 85-year-old mother got it and had no side effects.
It's a two. There's two. There's some that's a single shot.
Okay.
There's some that's a two shot. So after the first shot, they tell you, hey, after the second shot, you're probably gonna feel a few, I don't know, symptoms, whatever, for a couple of days or whatever.
Okay,
so,
I got you.
So it varies. It varies from like her mother's second shot, she no problem.
My mom's like 86 or something.
But
wow.
Shamel, out of the three of us, Shamel had the worst reaction. She's got the second, and me, I'm
wow.
So did you get your
now
first
listen?
shot?
No, listen. My entire family had COVID, right? In December or January or so.
Oh, okay.
So I have a little immunity, I hope. I have another
herd immunity.
I have another month or two to pray about it, from what I understand. Is that right?
Well, that's so true, because my sister and my nephew and his whole family got it, and they all kind of went through it. And I was talking to him. He says he's tested positive for antibodies, so still has antibodies.
Right.
But his wife just got vaccinated. Now my sister got it, and she's still in the hospital. And it's not good. It's not a good thing. And my daughter's husband's father got it, and he's in ICU on the second phase. So they're still in the hospital.
Yeah, serious.
Through. So I talked to my doctor. He said, "Hey man, if you get a chance, get it, because the alternatives are not worth it." But you had it, and you went through it pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, you went through it pretty good. Now I lost my sense of smell. So you know me, I was messed up for a while.
What about the fragrance?
Right. Listen,
we'll talk about that.
Right. Yeah.
You're going too fast.
Yeah. That messed me up. So.
But not just quite this minute.
Right.
Pastor, I did write something about you. This is kind of from your bio, just so everybody can know exactly who Pastor Wayne Chaney Jr. is.
Sure.
And I heard that affectionately you are called Pastor Wayne.
Sure.
Now, I did not know that. I've always called you Pastor Chaney, so I'm going to just keep up.
Well, listen, it's evolved. That bio was written about 10 years ago. It was Pastor Wayne. It's Pastor Wayne Chaney. Then it was Pastor Wayne. People don't care. There's no reverence this day and age. They just, what's up, Wayne? What's up, Wayne? So I'm Wayne now. Wayne, it's all good. Things evolve. Right.
I can't go there. I feel like my mother would beat me over the head.
Listen, I'm the same way. I still call folks, anyone's older than me in the church, even if they're a new Christian, sister, such and such, sister,
brother.
Right. It's still in me. I
can't even walk on the altar or the.
Yep.
I can't walk up there. We would get the beat down when we.
I remember it.
We did that. So to this day, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not walking up there.
If you weren't called back in the day, you couldn't even walk across on a Monday, for a shortcut. Listen, you had to walk all the way around.
That's right. But you are a modern day pastor, and you are what I've written here is that a relevant contemporary man of God and a spiritual leader as the senior pastor of Antioch Church of Long Beach. Pastor Wayne's ministry extends way beyond the church, though, and we all know that. Not only in Long Beach, but in LA County as a whole, and then, of course, nationally, because you've been on the highly acclaimed show, Preachers of LA, which we got to talk about.
Okay, let's do it.
Controversial.
Let's do it.
And but your determination has influenced people inside and outside of the church. And I heard that you were voted in Long Beach as one of the 10 most powerful people in Long Beach twice. And also the city's Martin Luther King Jr. Peacemaker Award. So congratulations on that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for those who know you and for those who are meeting you for the first time, Pastor Wayne Chaney Jr.
Thank you. Thanks for fitting me into the car-fittable conversation.
Thank you.
Now you're fitting.
Yeah, now you're fitting in the
That's it.
Now you're a pastor in Long Beach, but I was wondering, it looks like a kind of jump. Usually it'll be the grandfather's a pastor, then the father's a pastor, then the son is a pastor, but you kind of jump the lines. Kind of tell us a little bit about that and how all that happened.
Yeah, I mean, ministers go all the way back to pastors to slavery for us. On both sides. Yeah, so my mother and father's parents were both pastors. In Los Angeles, Dr. T.M. Chambers Sr. was my mother's father, and Long Beach was Pastor Joe Chaney. So they met. In fact, T.M. Chambers Sr. came to help my grandfather, Joe Chaney, to get his start. Back then, there wasn't much help, no PR. And what you would do back then is bring the biggest preacher you knew to town to draw folks. And that's what they did. They became fast friends. My mother and father met each other, got the twinkle in their eye. And at 17 years old, is the story. They hooked up. They were married at 18. And so again, they got a really early start. My mother knew enough to pray that Hannah prayer. If you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. There's all kind of unique prophecies and all that. And thank God for his grace in that. But yeah, skip my grandfather, my father, mother, and hit me. I tried to run from it as long as I could.
Tell me about that running process.
Yeah.
So you were a PK by grandfather, huh?
Yeah. My plan was to go to school, go into law at the time.
Law school. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, again, go into corporate law, make some money, and I figured I would, give myself to God in this regard, right?
That's what you
at about 60. I thought I would get started at about 60. True story. And God had other plans.
And you're 42, 43?
42.
Yeah,
42.
Happy
reminiscent to me.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you're in a city that's very interesting to me because not only in Long Beach isn't necessarily the easiest of cities in LA County as a whole.
Sure.
And one of the areas in particular that I'm interested in is this whole homeless situation. Pastor, sometimes I get mad seeing the homeless, and I know I shouldn't, and I get convicted right away. But it's such a problem.
Significant problem, yeah.
Everywhere. And I say, there, but for the grace of God, go out. How are you handling it? It's a rough situation.
Yeah, just across the board. I mean, I think I appreciate you naming that. I mean, those of us in California and other, city centers where, church in a general sense is not the first consideration, are up against challenges. Many of our friends, and they have their own challenges, right? Every environment has its unique set of challenges, but this is not really, a quote unquote churched town. I mean, there are certain places in the country where you can hit, 20,000 member churches, back to back down, driving down one thoroughfare, right? Just all of Southern California for that matter, but particularly Southern California, LA County, it has this unique set of challenges. If your goal is to just, grow a church to 20,000 active members, if that's the trajectory, right? The benefit we have, I think, is often thinking through innovation. Much of what we're having to wrestle through and solve, the rest of the country is going to be going through in the next, depending on where you are, 5 to 20 years. Right. And there's so many opportunities to jump ship, to plant other places. Even I've been solicited. And as a pastor, in terms of that classic growth trajectory, you think, that would be a sweet situation. But deep down, I want to solve some of these issues that the church is not solving well as it relates to cultural engagement. And what better place to do it than here? Second thing is, I'm a generational thinking kind of guy. I don't want to run from the difficult thing in my lifetime to pass the battle to my son I was unwilling to face, right? Because everywhere else is going to be facing what we're facing right now. And so, again, I feel called to Southern California, specifically to LA County, and I love the challenge. It's what wakes me up every single morning. As it relates to the issue of homelessness, that is a big problem. It is a big, huge challenge. And again, there are great initiatives in attempting not just to meet practical needs. There are folks meeting practical needs on a regular basis, but there are some overarching needs that, really have to be addressed. And one of the things I don't think we talk enough about is the rising prices of homes in Southern California. The cost of living is displacing a lot of folks. And when you go on the street, the normal, the perception is that there are folks that are mentally unstable or there's drug use. But in the streets of Southern California, you have folks who are articulate, educated, who have fallen on hard times. And
the cost of housing is so high.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We went to, just a couple of things. We went to, in Westwood, where the VA is, and there's all these street tents. And I think they're all veterans. They just let them packed there because they don't have places to stay. So there's a whole row of tents where people are living, and it's just a real problem. We have you familiar, I'm sure, with Habitat for Humanity.
Yes. We work with them. We built homes with them. In fact, they're building 10 homes. We just did dedication for not too far from us, about 5 minutes from us. And our plan with another initiative we have going on is to work with them to to the best of our ability to furnish all the homes once they're built.
Great,
and so really they're doing great work.
Yeah, a dear friend of ours named Fred Brewer. I don't know if you know him, but he was with Habitat for Humanity. He's doing a bike across America to raise funds for homeless.
Nice. Now, bicycle or motorcycle?
Bicycle.
Bicycle?
Yeah, bicycle.
Wow. I'll be praying for him, and I'm gonna send some funds, and that's amazing thing. That's amazing thing.
He's training now. But because of that issue, being with Habitat for Humanity, it's on his heart to do something. So what can I do to help the situation? So
absolutely. And there are some, and again, the more you work with these organizations, you find that there are organizations and institutions that, in many respects, are receiving funds to eradicate this issue, but they make money on this issue being perpetuated.
Like, what are they doing?
So at times, they're the opponents to really knocking a dent in the homelessness. I mean, it's a complex issue. You have rising property values. You have greater despair and people just giving up. Some people give up and commit suicide. Other people let everything go and resort to drugs. There's a mental health issue and the placement for people that are wrestling through mental health. There's just so much. It's a complex issue, but I think there are good organizations in Southern California. They're helping to connect the dots and knock a dent in this homelessness issue. But it's going to be pervasive for a while.
And I feel bad because I've seen the homeless and I'll pray for them and bring some. But when they got close to my office,
I
was like, y'all are too close.
Right.
And then I felt bad. I was convicted, but I'm still like, but y'all are really still too close.
Right. There's no rhyme or reason now. It's not a set area. It used to be Skid Row downtown, but I mean, now we're talking Westwood, we're talking, Skid Row, we're talking downtown city centers, entertainment districts. Yep,
all over. Yes, it's something. But now I've read, and I was saying this to Pastor Jamal Bryant.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something kind of irreverent, but
my go for it.
Is kind of, you are another educated Negro.
Oh, listen.
I told him you got more degrees than a thermometer.
Listen, I'm working on that last one. I'm still working, and I'm sweating bullets, and I'm gonna be irreverent. I've cussed a couple times while writing this dissertation. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, a good cuss. Thank God for the grace, His grace.
You went to Morehouse, Luther Rice University, Fuller Seminary, Claremont School of Theology, and now you're in your doctoral program at Duke University Ministries,
Divinity. Yep.
Yeah, why Duke? Why Duke? And how does that relate to some of your theological frameworks?
So for me, interesting you asked that question. So I grew up long line of Baptist ministers. Both my grandparents were Baptist ministers. My great grandfather, not my great, my great grandfather was a slave by the name of Cicero Chambers, who great grandfather. Now, my grandfather was 64 years old when he had my mother, but that's another story. That's another story.
You got some stories.
Right. You said, you say you had time? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was just a legendary pastor. One of the top, I would say, 5 pastors in the country. In his time, he had spoken at the White House a couple times. He was the first president of Progressive Baptist Convention. He's the one that, with the older preachers, were giving Martin Luther King a difficult time, particularly in the South. He's the one that helped broker some of the peace there. In fact, when they broke off from National Baptist with the big fight, they started Progressive Baptist. He was educated in Princeton, got a doctorate from Princeton back in 1930s or something like that. So he was, but his father So his two wives before my grandmother died. They just died. And so as a man who's up in his age, but just still vibrant.
Obviously.
He married a woman 30 years younger than him. However, this wasn't shallow or anything. To meet my grandmother, I mean, she was grace personified. She was great. She was class. She was mature. They called her the Mrs. The Mrs. And that back then, that was a term of endearment. And so again, she was a businesswoman and just a real. So again, to know her, it makes sense. But 30 years younger. So I had my mother at 64. He was born, my grandfather, 1897. 1897. You've heard of Caesar Clark, Pastor Caesar Clark? Okay, at Good Street Baptist Church. So he's the one who recommended Dr. Clark. He was there, Pastor Good Street, recommended him in Dallas. But he was born in 1897. His father was a slave by the name of Cicero Chambers. Beautiful story, and I'll give a quick one, right?
Yeah.
He, in slavery, I don't know how he did it. As a slave, he put aside $1,500 in slavery in the late 1800s to buy himself a wife in slavery, but realized that they would never be free according to his plans and at the pace of work in the time he was able to put aside money. So with a promise that I'm going to come back for you, he sold her back into slavery to buy his freedom, to accelerate his plan to make more money, came back, found her, bought her out of slavery. They both became free. And he's one of the founding pastors, that first group, if you've ever heard of Bishop's College in Dallas. He was one of the founding members of Bishop's College in Dallas. So that's a little bit of the background. I came from
That's what Patrick Henderson was saying. I don't know if you know Patrick Henderson, the keyboard player. And he was with he did Saints and Praise series. He did the Saints and Praise series for us. That.
I love it.
So I just want to read this because what you just said just really blew my mind. So he got his freedom. Sold his wife back into slavery. And then so he could go back and get some more money. And then came back and bought it back out of slavery.
Bought her out of slavery. And I'm struck by that. And I know I would tie it back
in. Trusted him.
But I know we started with the education piece, but I just, in terms of background, it's that convicts me to this day. And I think about what some of our forefathers and mothers were able to go through, accomplish, against all odds. I mean, honestly, after learning of that, that was one of the things that drove me to go back to school. I literally was a dropout. Came back to help my grandfather in ministry. The church was once a leading church in the city. It began to dwindle as he got up in age, couldn't do what he used to do. I came for a spring break to visit him. And when I came to visit him, I saw the church, the condition it was in, and that was the beginning of my burden for ministry. It wasn't to come try to preach. I just wanted it broke my heart to see him that way. And I went in the parking lot and I just cried like a baby. And I began to pray about it. And I felt like the Lord said, come lift his arms, come help him, come stand with him. I mean, with no promise of career or, career trajectory. It was just one faith step to help him do that. And the story of this grandfather, I started to read through it again. I said, if in his lifetime as a slave, he could do that, buy a wife, sell a wife, buy her back, gain their freedom, and go on to found a college that's educated many of African-American pastors in the country. I said, I can't. Ministry was going well. It was growing. I said, for the sake of my kids, what am I going to do in my generation? How am I going to maximize? I know I'm busy. I know there's ministry demand at that time that was starting to build. But I said to myself, I can keep that up, and God will grace me to do that, as well as pursue formal education again. At that time, as an adult in ministry, I just continued to push and persevere. And, that was, in fact, in my admission letter, I believe it was to Claremont, that's one of the things that I placed there. I told him about the story of my grandfather. I said, if he could do that, listen, I've got to do a lot more in my lifetime.
Yeah, you should do a book on that to just chronicle that, because
I would love
that's
that.
very important information, and that you can make those links so heavily, because many of us cannot do that.
But a lot of times we need to know our history in that way, you know, for the Bishop's College and things like that would led to that. So that's really that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah,
I see why.
Pastor Buster Soaries is on. I just saw him on, and Patrick Henderson. They're letting me know that I'm kind of behind in my thinking, not knowing who your great grandfather was. So
no.
so I'm sorry about that. But now,
no, those are good men. Good men.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that we've been talking about in that regard, I mean, and you have such a long line of that, so you know a little bit about the controversies and everything that are going on about Black liberation theology, and how some of the evangelicals are saying, white evangelicals are saying that's not of God, and you can only preach the word that you see in the book, and you shouldn't be talking about social issues. How do you feel about that, the whole Black liberation?
Yeah, I think there's a challenge, because we're butting up against, and I don't mean this, it's not to isolate any one group of people, but we know, as it relates to the broader construct, we're butting up against, in many respects, with the last election, last presidency, against white supremacy that's surfacing in multiple areas. And until the nest is stirred, you don't see some of those things that are, for those of us who walk in different circles, that are, pervasive. There's a strong undercurrent that we felt for years. The rest of the population is beginning to see come to the surface. And, some of it's just formation, the way we were trained in, while it can be quantified, some of us are aware of our formation and can make adjustments as new facts come in. Others have no clue what's formed them, and in the midst of the controversy as it relates to Black liberation theology, there's controversy related to critical race theory. And, Southern Baptist Seminary presidents have come together a while ago, and they're still processing
I don't know
that.
What critical race thing
it's really a sociological, study on race, power dynamics, intersectionality, but from, again, the perspective of the in a general sense, the minoritized people groups. And so there's pushback at whether it's critical race theory or whether it's Black liberation theology, because it is challenging many of the power structures that are not used to being challenged. But I will say, and particularly by minority or minoritized people groups. There are many, we teach you, we instruct you, we have a better, more ascended way. And many of them don't know the origin of, again, their own formation. I think one of, and again, there's not a full alignment with me or anyone, with any one theory, philosophy, or theology. But I think one of the things that Dr. Cone raises that is problematic for them is, again, as opposed to couching the gospel in its time in observing Jesus's message to the marginalized, the disfranchised, and those on the other side, the challenge side of the power differential. They have a problem with that, because they've made the quote unquote gospel one that simply addresses, for many, your eternal destination or the quality of spiritual renewal. And I think the challenge is we've got to go a little bit beyond that. We talked about this a little bit. Now I'll do the short version, right? In the early 1900s, there was the modernist fundamentalist divide. You know, on
Right.
one hand, you had the fundamentalist who, it was about, again, heaven, it was about the quality of spiritual life, it was about salvation and salvation decision, that sort of thing. The short version, the modernists, you know, emphasize more care for the poor, the here and now, and how does our faith inform what is taking place here. Now, for African Americans, and we talked about this, I think I've never had anybody make this observation, but Brian Laritz makes a great observation in that as Blacks, we didn't have the luxury to choose either or. We had a rich, historically rich, robust spirituality on one hand, but the flip side is we could not ignore how our faith informed our treatment. We identified, because we don't identify with the marginalized, we were the marginalized. So we couldn't choose one or the other, but we actually integrated both. And I think, honestly, somebody needs to do a paper on this or a dissertation on this. I'm not going to do it. I'm already almost done with mine. But on how African American or historical Black, the Black Christian faith tradition really has a lot to offer the church on a whole in this day and age, where there's a need for a truly rich spiritual encounter working in tandem with, again, a sense of the gospel being expanded from personal encounter to the transformation of people's lives, to the betterment of people's lives. I have a challenge with a gospel that is not extended to the marginalized. Jesus has a challenge with that. In fact, the Bible clearly lets us know in the New Testament, right? Pure and undefiled religion is caring for widows and orphans in their distress. It's said there's no disconnection from that. And that's the problem. There's one gentleman who put a motion on the floor with the Southern Baptist Convention at one point, and our friend Dwight McKissick there in Texas, opposed it, but to denounce what they call the social gospel.
To denounce it, so things that are happening socially.
It goes back to the point of having a compassionate heart. You know, sometimes you can be so, I use the term legalistic, that you're not touched by the infirmities. You're not touched like Jesus. He's touched by our infirmities.
Yes.
And then sometimes we're not touched by the infirmities of the people we see.
Yes.
And so that's the where we need to be. And I think that's where that's the essence of the gospel.
It's what it says.
Yes.
But
it says that he's a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Jesus himself. And there's this term, this theological term, it's a hermeneutic. It's hermeneutic is interpretive lenses. The lenses we use or we bring to the text, to the gospel. And people always say it, particularly with my friends, we get in these debates or conversations, passionate conversations, right? It's well, brother, you just need a biblical worldview, and that's usually the end all. Everybody's quiet after that. Well, I respond, which one?
Yes.
Right.
Which, because we all are bringing lenses. Well, we're all bringing our own lenses that come from our formation, our training, our interactions. If you don't know anyone who looks like me or haven't interacted with anyone who looks like me, you have a perception, interpretation, lenses you bring, interpretive lenses that you bring to the same text as we're arguing whether police brutality really exists.
Hit it home.
And you're telling me don't bring this identification with the poor, with the disenfranchised, with the marginalized, with those who are experiencing injustice, inequity. You don't need to identify with that. Stick to the gospel. Well, my lenses bring.
The gospel says you ought to be compassionate. You ought to be touched by what's going on there.
I think we've gone even further than that in all of this right now, because I have I'm irritated because there has been this move to cancel people, Black people, who aren't thinking like the this white evangelical theory. So we got a guy right now named Kelly is his last name. He's not a pastor, but he's got
you mean the guy that wrote this book called The MAGA Doctrine?
Yeah, he's got something called the MAGA
Charles
Doctrine.
Kirk. His name is Charles Kirk.
And he is canceling, he's telling
wanting
people in church to stop inviting Lecrae to your church. Stop, don't invite him. They're canceling him. And with Lecrae, the majority of his engagements, etc., in the white churches, and he's saying because that he supported Ralph Warnock, Pastor Ralph Warnock, because he supported him, and Pastor Ralph Warnock, they're saying is pro-abortion, then Lecrae is not a Christian.
Yeah.
And we need to cancel him. How do you feel about that? I think this has gotten so far out of whack now that if you don't believe exactly like a Paula White or a Copeland or something like that thinks, then you're not even a Christian. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about pro-abortion stance?
It's foolishness that we don't recognize because of our formation again. And it's so interesting. All of us pick and choose the biblical issues that we are not going to scrutinize in order to, participate in the process. The challenge is, they give, there's no latitude given for others who choose to, again, interact a big issue is that, there are many folks that supported people who would deal with some of these issues that have been swept under the rug. And because they don't understand their formation, well, let's just talk about how we got here. Now, I'm not suggesting that these are not issues that need to be grappled with, but here's my point. It would be one thing if Lecrae himself was promoting abortion on a regular basis, which is another conversation, right? But because he supported a man as he combed through his positions who didn't align with him on an issue, now we're canceling Lecrae without even asking Lecrae what is his position on the issue that you really care about, right? If we scrutinized or used the same lenses, and we actually did, and you said that it was the MAGA doctrine, right? That he wrote the book, he wrote the book MAGA doctrine. I mean, we could go down a list of things that we'll find biblical prohibition with if we chose to dissect, all those who were aligned to the MAGA movement, right? There are all sorts of biblical violations there. But here's the problem. People, again, don't realize what formed their camp, their way of thinking. And this goes back to the early 19, the fundamentalist modernist divide, but that fundamentalist track, not all, but some, again, when we look at the early 80s, were part of what came to be known as the moral majority led by Jerry Falwell. And at that time, what he understood, which was, politically, in terms of political strategy, it was ingenious, but in terms of biblical, a holistic biblical view, it was problematic. People assume that they got together and prayed to the Lord. The Lord told them, listen, I feel like my church should deal with these two issues of abortion and homosexuality. And it was a thus saith the Lord. Well, here's the challenge with that. Historically, what they did was chose two issues. Now think about the early 80s that were easy to rally a base around. If you want to move a group of people, you can't give them 150 principles that they all agree to. You have to find a couple of common denominators. And so for a fundamentalist conservative group of people, it was not done. Those issues weren't chosen because they got a word from the Lord. those specific issues were chosen because it was easy to rally people around them to create a robust political base in order to get things done in Washington or to get things done in the country. Now, all the sermons, the preaching, the formation to align people and to grow the movement had to target those issues. Now, what we're experiencing are the remnants of what was began then. So now we call you a Christian candidate, depending on how you address just two issues of the entire biblical narrative. For me, that's problematic. Not because those issues don't need to be wrestled with, not because we don't need to address those issues, but because now you have taken, those issues, and those are, again, the lenses you use. Not only see scripture, but the lenses, the interpretive lenses you use to enact righteousness in society. And that is a major problem. And this is why, when you talk about race, when you talk about homelessness, when you talk about care for the poor, when you talk about equity, why they cannot see those themes in the Bible, because these others have elevated these others over and above them, and they've eclipsed every other biblical issue, and that is a problem. I believe, however,
and if you're not staunchly against those two things, I mean, because what's happening, I think, is the church as a whole really doesn't deal with the trans community, homosexuality, homelessness to some degree. Some of the things that seem uncomfortable, we have to start dealing with now, I think. And I don't know. It's
I think to me, there's definitely, for me, there's been an evolution of thought and lens. My lens have evolved. Because when I first got saved, I was swept into that thought process, and that these were two key issues. And but it's been over the years as you grow in the Lord, that's why I say I hope that we all can do that. Begin to see and been touched by George Floyd and all these different situations. They said, hey, women, I need to rethink how I deal with certain things. And so I'm just hoping that the church as a whole begins to say, hey, we need to rethink. And I even asked the question to one. I said, do you think God cares who we put as judges in the Supreme Court? Do you think God has a political agenda? Does God have his agenda is to save people, to deal with people? So I've changed my whole view in terms of how I look at it, in terms of, and I make a distinction between what God wants for his church and the world at large. And so, to me, are two different things.
And we see it mirroring itself, even in something as simple as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. It permeates itself in everything. So this week we had this big thing about Oprah having an interview, which I thought was very insightful, where the question is, is there racism even in Windsor Palace? It just permeates itself everywhere, Pastor. And I just feel like this is the time now that we have to be really attacking these issues. And it's very frustrating to me. When you've got prophets, I say this almost every week, summoning angels from Africa.
That's foolishness. Just foolishness. Just listen. We call it what it is.
I said the angels came, but they came for a different purpose. They came to deliver the folks.
Listen, the memes on that one. I mean, listen.
And I told my husband, because he's the spiritual advisor in our house, I said, can you call angels from Africa? Do they do something special?
Right. Listen, it's problematic. And again, one of the things, and I'm God's hand, I believe with all my heart was on me before I ever wrestled through, read, dealt with, in-depth theological issues. But the challenge is, you can get away with growing a church, and the oil will flow on your life or through you, without wrestling through these deep theological frameworks and processing in that way. But you begin to see the stress fractures of an anemic spiritual or theological framework when there's crisis, when you have to speak to issues of race and how culture, race, politics all come into play. I mean, that's when you start to see the stress fractures. And the challenge is, in most ministries, if you can move people, and your following swells, you start to believe you're an authority on everything. And again, you step out there into territory you're not savvy enough to. And listen, I'm soberly aware of being out of my depth, and the longer I live, the more I defer, right? But people start to believe their own press and feel as if everything that comes out of their mouth will be received because they have a following, well, I'll leave it alone. I'll leave it alone.
They think it's God speaking. Well, I mean, as you're doing all of this and being a pastor, you do it. I told you this before. You have a lovely wife, Maisha.
Oh, yeah. She's amazing. Amazing.
And wonderful. And I was telling you about your wife for me, and I haven't ever really talked to Maisha that much, but every time I see her, I just get excited and happy because she's not the norm of a first lady.
Yeah. Right,
she's like this sister girl that I can really relate to, is a real person. And
when she does the runways.
Oh, she does the runways.
My
girlfriend Lisa Collins.
Right. Oh yeah, I love it.
And she just encourages me. Now, there are some women that are first ladies that really are like that. They're more traditional and the hat wearing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But some of the women I look at that are first ladies just seem depressed and just like they're in kind of a prison. And
you know what? They probably are. And and I mean that. And I no, and I mean it sincerely. There is, when you come into ministry, in many respects, when you're young, or even many of the wives who are along for the ride, sometimes contributing, sometimes along for the ride with their husband. There's a pressure that comes externally. I mean, there's an expectation. You're compared to, if there was a predecessor, you're compared to the predecessor, the first lady. There's expectation of those that, in many respects, help to keep the ministry going. And their true person often gets buried in all of that. And so they have this private self in this well habituated public self. My wife calls it, false self, right? And other writers, right? And there's this dissonance where you're trying to find your rhythm. Some never find it. The true person is eclipsed by the role that they've been forced to play. And
who forces that on them?
Well, I think it's expectation. I think that it's role expectation. Sometimes the husband, other times the husband is saying, "Hey, do you?" But it's an attempt to be received by the broader context, or again, they're trying to figure out how to fit within the broader context. And it can be debilitating. I love my wife. She has a ministry called Hiding Behind the Lipstick. And basically it's the mask that we hide behind, and it's for women. And she's done a phenomenal job. She's done it with first lady. She's done it with NBA wives. She's done it with she's done it with youth departments. She's done it with senior citizen home. And there is a universal freedom that they all find as she helps them become their authentic self. Now, it's more difficult in certain environments than others, but I think it's important, particularly as pastors, for us to give our wives early on that room, that freedom, that latitude, reassurance that your identity is in God, and He's made you unique for a purpose.
Right.
You walking in freedom
Yeah,
will free 1,000 others. So we started that way. But my wife actually did the work and went much deeper. She was part of the spiritual formation program at Biola, which was amazing. And the work went even deeper. And so what you see in her now is authentic. There's no dissonance. But it's really congruent. It's really congruent. Yeah.
Yeah. I just really appreciate it for that. My husband and I actually, well, we did it, but we did counseling with some pastors and their wives.
Yep.
And it blew my mind, my brain, and everything off. Just some of the, I mean, I was like,
yeah.
Oh, good Lord, had mercy. What's going on here?
Yeah, some stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep a straight face. I mean, some of them saying things like they haven't had sex in 8 years and just crazy stuff. But I mean,
at my worst, that was never our testimony. Praise God. At my worst, listen, there have been some good days. There have been some bad days. There have been some hills to climb, but that wasn't a testimony. Thank you. Listen.
But I was just really kind of shocked about that.
Yeah.
But I wanted
serious.
to go into a couple of other things about you that some people may not know that we've just learned. First of all, that you were a track star. I want to talk about you in track.
Listen,
because my family loves track.
That's right. That's right. I don't know about star. And the reason I say it, now, if I were somewhere else, but I went to Long Beach Poly High, I mean, where people, won gold medals after leaving, and were NFL first round draft picks. So it's difficult for me to say star in that environment, but I was all right. I
wanted to give props to my dad, who's 93, who I was telling you about, who holds a record at Cal Poly.
Well, he won the first
Cal Poly.
Right, at Cal Poly. He was the first I guess winner of any kind of
any championship.
First winner of a championship at Cal Poly.
But they're just now looking for him to recognize him for that.
And they found him
at 93.
They found him off of your mother talking on a talk show or something.
I don't know. But
no, we got to do that. This is the time. We need a petition. We need to. I mean, because I'm sure there's a story there. What years was he there?
It had to be in the 40s.
See, I'm sure there's some stories.
He was born in 1927.
I'm sure there's a story there.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
In terms of,
he's got some stories because he told us a number of stories. Yeah.
I mean, for his recognition in not being recognized.
Yeah.
In that time when he broke those records and put them on the map. It'd be interesting to, I think this is a great climate to revisit.
Yeah, we've been taping his stories. We got to tape it and just actually put it in print to print. But I wanted to get back to my initial point. You said that one of the, after COVID, one of the things is that, you lose your sense of smell. And you've been there, bro. So I'm just saying, how do you, that when you put on the cologne, you don't even smell the cologne?
You're a lover of great fragrances. So
I just, listen,
fragrances, all kinds of
fragrances. It started in childhood. I smell air. I don't know why. I mean, this nose is not for looks. You see that profile right there? That is not for looks. I smell everything. Don't be offended. If I come to your house and you hand me a glass of something to drink, before I put a drink in there, I smell it. I don't know why.
Oh, I can't.
I smell everything.
I'm glad you warned me, because if I had you over, I know not to just.
Listen,
gonna clean it all up.
It's places I go
put some Febreze on it.
I smell all that. I'll tell you what you cleaned with. What was in your refrigerator last. This nose of mine is just. I mean, so really.
Are you a clean freak? Are you a clean freak?
I wouldn't say that. But my mess has to smell good, even if it is messy. So I smell everything. Yes.
Everybody, yes.
So nuance, I'm a lover. I'm a lover of fragrance.
So how do you use your special nose? What gift? How do you use that gift to do some other things?
It took me most of my life to appreciate that gift. But listen, I have for years, loved fragrance since high school. And eventually got into the niche fragrance, and then just didn't do it for me anymore. So I had to create my own compositions.
Boy.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, we were in South France, my wife and I. We went, she actually took me for anniversary, and while there, I said, well, you know what I have to do. You know, we made a unique composition. We created, I created 3 fragrances while there. One, I've been tweaking for the last 7 years. It was set to be released last year, but there's a release coming this year for that fragrance. In fact, there are a couple of names up in the air. I may, put it to vote and let the people decide. But on one hand, there is Without Words. You know, we spend so much of our time, inspiring with words, but that unspoken inspiration when you just walk through a room and you make a statement. And fragrance is one of those things that actually transports you. And there are fragrances that I can give you when there's a business meeting and you're meeting with not multimillionaires, when you're going to see a billionaire. There's a fragrance I will give you that will make you smell like $1 billion. And there are fragrances, intimate fragrances, where you're going to be booed up. You don't want to project too much, but they've got to get close to appreciate it. But then there are fragrances you walk through the room and it just it lingers for a while. Again, without words. You don't want to talk too much. You want to make a statement. So Without Words is one. The other possibility is Juillet. And that is July in French. And really the reason it was my anniversary, my wife is in July 18th. And that's when we were there. That's when I made this composition. So it'll be one of the two. And so we'll probably put that to vote, but the release is coming. I'm really excited about giving to the people what's been good, what's good to me, and I never give to the folks what's not good to me. So this is years of curating to bring you this. So
What was your fragrance in high school? I just have.
High school. Now, what part of high school? Was it after the Chronic album, or because that's around the time. Which time? Because after Snoop, that was middle school. That was late middle school when he did the put on the baby powder and cool water cologne. You remember that? Back then, I think that was the end of middle school. By the high school, I was experimenting, and I can't remember as much of what I was wearing in high school because the Chronic album had come out, and I was from Long Beach, and so there was a lot going on there.
You got a cool water pass, don't you?
Listen, it's in there. Yes. And the only reason most people stop wearing cool water is because you want some mystique, but everybody you bumped into was wearing it, and they would say, that's cool water. But that's still, listen, I've been on the niche things, and I have, it's finer, the things that I'm creating, but every fragrance maker at some point was inspired by cool water. Listen.
We're from the Old Spice era.
Listen.
I've never been an Old Spice person.
But I have something with a little spice that'll bless you, Doc. I have something. Yeah, you'll appreciate it.
That is so funny.
Cool water is the 90s era LA. If you
cool water.
Beach, cool water.
That was it.
I was raising kids by then.
But you have to layer. I haven't given my secrets to everybody, but sometimes you have to layer.
You layer.
Sometimes it matters, what sort of lotion you have on. And how that.
I've tried that and I've made a mess.
Listen.
Sometimes I'm just stinking with some weird smell.
I'll send you some suggestions. I'm telling you. Sometimes you have to layer. It depends on what you have. You have to layer. But I'm going to send you this fragrance.
So you got to be able to make. You could tell the difference.
So does your wife wear perfume all the time? Or?
That is one of my pastimes. So again, what I had to do is get her into it because I'll be gone for hours and come back. And she would look at the bill and say, Wayne, you have a problem. Like, you have a real problem. So what I did is I just engrafted her into my problem. I started bringing her stuff. She's like, oh, I love that. She stopped looking at the bill. After I brought her some stuff, she stopped looking at the bill.
My girlfriend, Ann Griffin, just said, do you remember Jade East? That was probably before your time.
Right.
Brothers would be wearing that and wouldn't take a bath.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's a no-go.
Oh, gosh. preaching was so terrible. What, I have another question I want to ask you. Now, this was controversial and probably...
So what is this coming out? Is it coming out soon?
He said this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah. The fragrance.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
This year. Listen, you don't have to look forward to it. I'm going to send you a sample of the fragrance. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to hear what you think.
Forward to that.
Yeah, we're excited.
We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, I'm going to be messy now.
Go ahead. I love it.
For a minute.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Preachers of LA.
Now, see, wait a minute. This is a preacher. You're supposed to start with that and the resolve and end on a crescendo. You want to go controversial. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Listen.
Fellowship in here.
Listen, I can handle it. I've been on TMZ before. I can handle this. I can handle it. It's all right.
Throw out the resume.
What? I mean, you know, this is the thing I find funny.
Okay, talk to me.
That so many people complain about that show.
Yep.
And watch it. It's what was the highest rated show on Oxygen.
Yes.
But it's I just don't know what to say. And I've heard there are rumors that it might come back. We don't know. But how did you resolve this in yourself to do a show like that? What was your reason?
Okay. You want the real reason, right? Here it is.
Yeah, I want the real reason.
So long before preachers, you know, and I'm not trying to get spiritual. We'll get back to the controversy and how. All right, but let me ask you this first. Did you ever watch it?
I watched a show and I've watched some of the clips on YouTube.
All right, so that's it. See, I'm telling you, what happened was, you know, I think, and it was genius. I think there was this relationship between good Christian producers. I mean, you know, Dr. Carter and Lemmy, and then also it's a marriage with the network. And in order to, I think, really get buzz and to drive people there, the sizzle felt really the promo felt really controversial. So I mean, that's what set off the firestorms, and people's opinions were locked in before, I think, really watching the show. And again, there is television. There were some things there that, you know, are arguably pretty controversial, right? But most of the controversy, I think, was from the sizzle that went to promote the show, and they know their business, right? That was meant to pique curiosity and drive people to the show. But as you watch the show, you know, there are a couple moments here and there. I don't know which episode you saw, but there was a fairly redemptive theme, and it compared to the sizzle, it really was, you know, pretty uneventful, you know, when you watch the show. And there were, again, the goal was to ensure every episode ended up with some sort of resolve, some sort of ministry moment. And, you know, obviously it wasn't church service, but, you know, that was kind of my take, right? Now, involvement. I was in Dubai in a desert safari in the year 2000, if I was Conan O'Brien, right? And as I was there, we took a desert safari. We had a day off of ministry. My friend Eddie and I were in the back of a desert safari in a caravan of vehicles with a man who spoke Arabic, no English. We spoke English, no Arabic, so we're getting lost in translation. But it's what they call in drama. You felt the illusion of the first time. You felt like you were in an Indiana Jones story. I mean, you look off the side of the road, there are camels walking off the side of the road, nothing but desert all the way around. The man in full head garb only spoke Arabic. We only spoke English, and he was playing this Arabic music that was just beautiful. I mean, it was time appropriate, right? Or you know, it was mood appropriate. And he finally gets 3 words out we understand. He said, "You like music?" I said, "Yeah, we like music." He takes out that CD and puts in Cash Money Click, y'all. So here I am in Desert Safari in Dubai with camels off to the side of the road, riding to Every Time I Come Around, You're Gonna Bling Bling. I mean, literally. My friend and I looked at each other. We said, man, this is crazy. And you'll appreciate this. We said there are people, while we're trying to get people to come to church service, there are people sitting in a studio the size of my bedroom, sending frequencies across the globe that are literally changing culture. I mean, if you go to Dubai now, I mean, you see people, hanging on, driving through the strip. It looks like the Shaw, except they have Rolls Royces and Ferraris at 16, 17 years old with real Rolex diamonds, and Rolexes draping their arm, Patek's on their wrist, and with a gangster lean in Dubai. And the Lord spoke to me in 2000, back before everybody was popular, and said, that entertainment is going to be the new mission field. He said that he showed me that people sitting in a studio the size of my bedroom, sending frequencies that are changing the globe, and we're trying to get it all done with a good church service. And so at that moment, we began to create that as our value system. And for years, we would do things, I mean, just at the time, it was a neighborhood church. And we were doing inside the actor studio back when, Malik Yoba was, I can't remember, it was Newark on the cover of one of the shots with him, and others would come and just do interviews, that sort of thing, to sow seeds into that. But, just never really, figured out how to connect the dots. I was sitting in my car, and this is crazy. It was all God. There was, and it's going to get, how much time do we have? We have 2 minutes?
Well, just a couple of minutes,
All right, so I'm sitting there, and, I hear this promo on KJLH. We had a show on KJLH at the time. I heard this promo about this event coming up, and this lady's talking and saying that God told her entertainment some years later is the next mission field. And that piqued my interest. I said, I've got to find out who this is. Now, put a pin there. There was my first Sunday school teacher. My grandfather's church was a lady by the name of Yvonne Johnson. Yvonne Johnson had an uncle. My grandfather just passed. I was missing him. She had an uncle by the name of she called him Uncle Billy. And she said, you got to meet him. He's a minister. He feeds the homeless every day of his life, et cetera, and you're going to love him. It took us a year to meet. He finally walked through the door, cracked the door. I saw his face. He smiled like my grandfather, a man full of love. And he reminded me of my grandfather. My heart just opened up. The Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, give that man anything that he needs. Work with him, support. I felt like he was a grandfather. He was telling me about his homeless ministry out in South Central. We took, film, television, camera crew down there to capture it. We would raise offerings. We would write checks for all that stuff. And we just started to connect. He was going back telling his family about, he said, all these pastors I reached out to, he said, this is the only one that's connected with me. So long story short, I get ready to call to find out about this thing this lady's announcing on the radio. Before I could call her, her office called the church and said, could you be a part of this? Or could we announce this? I said, of course you could announce it. We've been wanting to do this for years. We believe too that entertainment's the next untapped mission field, right? And she came that day and spoke. We had the great meeting. We laid hands, prophesied, she was crying, we were crying. She went back, she said, hey, listen, can you come to the event, the kickoff, the date of this deal, the Birch Summit, the first year, right? And so we come, we're hanging out, there, and, she, standing room, only like 20 seats, and the room was full. Right this way, Pastor Jenny, right this way. And I'm thinking, there's other people that are in the industry here. Why they have seats for me, I just glad to be here. And they sat me in the seat. I'm looking around, wondering what's going on. I look to my right, and who's sitting at my right? This man who feeds the homeless every day of his life in South Central LA. And I said, what are you doing here? And he looked at me and said, what are you doing here? And I laughed and I joked. I thought about it. I said, no, what are you doing here? This doesn't feel like you're seen. I mean, I don't know. We've done the homeless thing, but what are you? He said, oh, I didn't tell you. He said, my daughter puts all this on. And for the last year, he was telling her every year, every day, every week about this young man that's in ministry that's like a grandson to him. And my point is with this, when people ask me how God spoke a word back in 2000, we didn't work to put all the pieces together, but just in obedience to the voice of the Holy Spirit. It wasn't through striving or networking or trying to, it was actually, brings us full circle to your original statement. It was actually working to feed the homeless in South Central LA. And while I'm over here just living my life, God is God is connecting the dots
Doesn't
behind the scenes. And so
side.
it came full circle. And so for me, it wasn't an opportunity that I was looking to jump into. For me, as a word God spoke back in 2000. And I believe, and we shot, 2 or 3 shows unrelated to preachers before that. I mean, Farnsworth Bentley and I shot the show. Nigel Lithgow was pushing that back then. It never got picked up, and a couple others, right? But that's the opportunity that came together and actually materialized. We've we've pitched since, and they're still pitching. But with that said, people see that and assume preachers just jump to the opportunity. But no, this was something that we counted and our whole church knew was a value system before we ever got there. And I prayed that we would be represented properly, and that our true light would shine and be shown there. But it wasn't that singular opportunity. That was the first step. And what we believe is, again, another untapped mission field. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Hey,
Well,
man.
Pastor, we've kept you over an extra 10 minutes. Which
It's all good. All good. All good.
We enjoyed this talk with you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we got to get together for dinner once this
I look forward to it.
I'm vaccinated now. So.
I love it. I love it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we got to have you again. And we just thank you so much. I hope everybody got a lot out of it. We've been talking to Pastor Wayne Chaney Jr.
Yes.
And, where can we reach you? You have a book that we need to know about real quick?
Yeah, it's been out a while. No new books, but last one was Your Miraculous Potential. Your Miraculous Potential. And
it's on Amazon.
Yes, everywhere. Yeah, I mean, everywhere you can buy books, you can get it. Yeah.
And we can all visit your church, Antioch.
I would love that. Antioch Church in Long Beach, in the heart of downtown Long Beach, in the entertainment district. We just moved there. Listen, when we have a worship service, you'll be one of the first. We have not had our official worship service.
Okay.
1 month before COVID was our grand opening. So we have not had an official worship service yet, but we're looking forward to that.
Okay.
Beautiful building, and it's going to be great.
Okay.
It's going to be great.
Okay, we've got to go. Well, thank you so much again.
Yes, ma'am.
God
Thank
bless
you.
And everything you're doing. And I'm glad we got to know you better.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I look forward to the next one. All right, take care. God bless.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hello, what's
Thank
up?
you so much for watching Carfitable
Yes,
Talks.
thank you.
Please remember to press that like button, and we need you to subscribe. And also,
leave some comments. Really need to hear from you.
thank you.